Now, I'd like to kick off with some easy questions, and raise your hand if this applies to you. Who's here that has ever done a Hangout? OK, in a room of about 400 people, everybody raises their hand. Now, this question, I always love to hear the answer. Who's here met somebody truly interesting in either a limited or public Hangout, and now you engage with them on a regular basis? Raise your hand. All right, about 25% of the room. This is new. This is the next generation of social, and it's in a Hangout. So who am I? I am Jonathan Beri. I'm the developer advocate for Google Hangouts. And today we're going to talk about the Hangouts apps platform. And we're going to begin by talking about the Hangout story. The Hangout story, how an internal tool that we were testing with became a global communication service. And we're going to go into some demos of people building on top of the platform and making compelling experiences within Hangouts. And here, live on stage, I'm actually going to build a Hangout app in front of all of you. And to kick us off, I'd like to introduce Amit Fulay, Product Manager for Google Hangouts.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you to everyone in the room for joining us and those on the live stream. We have a great session planned for you today. I want to begin by telling you how the Hangouts platform came about. We built Hangouts product as part of the Google Plus project as a new way of doing social. It is live, it is face-to-face, and you can do things together. We wanted to mimic the real life. This is how you socialize in the real world. And the product has been hugely successful since we launched. We've seen it being used to the most amazing and creative ways. We've seen guitar lessons happen, cooking classes happen in Hangouts. We've seen the President of the United States Hangout. Heck, we even saw guys jumping off a plane to be in a Hangout. How cool was that in the morning? But when we started this project, we wanted to build something for the users to do when they get in a Hangout. So we took our existing YouTube player, built an app out of it. You could come in, you can search through videos, you can queue them up, you can have this real social viewing experience. Then we started looking at the usage of Hangouts, and we realized Hangouts were being used increasingly in business settings. And one of the tools you want in that environment is the ability to collaborate over docs and presentations. So we took our Google Docs, created an app out of that. And we looked at the usage of these two things, the YouTube app and the Docs app. And we quickly realized the best way to take this ahead is to create APIs around our functionality and give it in the hands of all of you developers. So we launched the Google Hangouts platform a little over 3 months ago. It's open to all developers. Anyone can write and distribute an app. And as soon as we launched, we started to see a lot of unique activities come online. Here's an example of a poker game. This small company acted on a very simple but kind of obvious insight, which is poker is best played when you're face-to-face. So they took our API, they built this app, you get in a Hangout, you launch the game, you take a seat on the table, the cards are dealt, and as you go around, whoever's turn it is, their video, live video, shows up in the main window of the Hangout. Simple, engaging, just like real life. Here's another example of a startup in San Francisco called Scoot and Doodle that built a doodling app. And it, again, turned out to be really popular. You get in, you get to pick a color, you're doodling together. It's the same canvas, it's synced in real time. You can play Pictionary, teach art, learn art, just have fun. And it turned out, as we saw these activities come together, users were spending 2.5 times more in those Hangouts. That is 2.5 times more in the app that you write. We started to see another class of usage for our API. People were trying to enhance live conversations. And it all started with this slide. Now, before you laugh, that's not a real stash. That's the overlay of an image on my face. And there's a reason I put this slide here, because I want to tell you a story. A couple of engineers on our team looked at the capability that we had in the platform. We could detect faces of people in a Hangout and their features with pinpoint accuracy. So they built this prototype, a silly little thing. You could put mustache on the face. And they're like, we should do something with it. So I go to my marketing team, and I said, hey, we have this new feature in Hangouts. It's a mustache feature. And they were like, wow, that's brilliant. Really? Turns out they were running a Movember campaign. This was last November. So they like, turn this on in Hangout. So we put a little button that said mustache. It randomly picked mustaches and put an overlay on people's faces. Within hours, the stream was full with people taking pictures of themselves with mustache, having fun. Again, we realized we're onto something. Let's build this API, and we shipped it again as part of the platform. We also shipped an effects app that you might have seen. You can see the accuracy of overlaying images here. That's a snorkeling gear on a live video feed. And I've put that mustache just to prove that wasn't my real one in the previous. We saw developers take it to another level. Here's an example of an app built by a developer in Germany. It's a simple app you can use to support your team. You come up with the tagline, you pick the flag of your country. It creates this nice little banner at the bottom. It stays there when you're in a Hangout. Simple little enhancement to your live conversation. And you can dynamically update the message. Something, again, that can be very popular. I'm going to talk about the third class of usage for Hangouts platform. And this is all about bringing the power of Hangouts to your existing app. It started with SlideShare. They have an enormous amount of content, from presentations to docs to decks. They used our API to build a simple ability to launch a Hangout with a pre-populated presentation. Again, really useful. You can get in on a Hangout together, review things, saves you a lot of time. Another example of an app called Kaku. It's a small Japanese company. They had an existing Chrome Web Store app. It's a really good diagramming software. You can build things together, sketches, you can buy stencils. What they did was took Hangouts and brought it into their app. And it really lights up. It saves you so much round trip when you're collaborating with folks, because you can now get in a Hangout, get in a live synchronous conversation, and get your work done. Another example of a Norwegian company called Symphonical. They took their existing project management software, added the power of Hangouts to it. So as you can see, if you are a developer thinking about looking at this new platform, looking at this new way of socializing, which is Google plus Hangouts, there are three ways you can contribute. You can build activities inside of Hangouts. You can build enhancements for live conversations. And most importantly, you can bring the power of this face-to-face-to-face platform to your app. I have talked a lot about apps. Let's see some live demos. Jonathan, do you want to start a Hangout?
Sure. And I'll invite some of our friends, Amy and Wolf, to join us.
What I'm going to show you is 3 apps that we announced today. We're featuring. These are unique apps built by different teams. We're going to start with Google Art Project. And Jonathan here, this is a live Hangout, is joined by Amy and Wolf, who are our colleagues somewhere outside of Moscone, hopefully not on the roof. And what we're going to do here is start looking at art that interests us. And as you can see, Amy likes a painting. She shares it. It shows up. Jonathan can go to that, look at what interests other participants in the Hangout. Now let's take it a step further. Turns out Wolf in this Hangout is a little bit of an art freak. Hey, Wolf, how you doing?
Oh, wait, I don't think we can hear him.
Can you unmute Wolf? Hey, Wolf, how you doing?
There we go.
All right, we've got a big crowd here. Do you want to show them something cool?
Sure. Let me share this thing. We're going to start a tour. Okay, so this is by a Flemish Renaissance painter who liked to paint in sort of an arbitrary antiquity. So even though we have a big kind of Roman Colosseum here, if you look off to the left, there is sort of a Flemish village over here.
That's pretty amazing.
There's all...
Oh, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, we have this exact same print in our office, and I've never been able to see this level of detail before.
There's also all kinds of period construction detail. If you look at this here, there's, this is as far as we can go in. There's cranes and all kinds of things here. Oh, here is a human-powered crane over here with big wheels that people can run on. It's really neat.
That is amazing. Again, you can see this is not screen share. This is different people from different locations live in a Hangout exploring art together. Really engaging, really powerful. It's actually better than real life in this specific case. Let's take a look at another app here. Again, we're featuring this today, A Story Before Bed. This is an app built by a company called Jackson Fish Market. And we're going to do a little bit of role-playing here for the demo. Jonathan is young, you would say, but he's going to play the role of a grandfather. And he's going to try and grab the attention of those two kids in the Hangout. Now, if you've done a Hangout with a young one, how difficult is it to keep them around for more than 30 seconds? Impossible? I would agree. It's probably tougher than doing a skydive in a Hangout. What we're going to try and do is read a book. Hopefully, they're engaged. So play the role, Jonathan.
All right, kiddies. Let's read 5 Little Monkeys.
Oh, boy.
Okay, Grandpa.
I'll grab it off the bookshelf and begin. Let's open it up. There's some monkeys. 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head.
All right, that's good. That's good.
It's a good one.
I don't know about you,
Okay,
but
I think we're ready to go to the end.
if you're actually doing these kind of activities in a Hangout, you'll probably lose track of time. And that's great for app developers, because that's what you want, attention of your consumers. We're going to take a look at another example, a classic game, pool. You know, it's always fun to challenge someone to a game of pool. We're going to show this app that's built by Miniclip. And let's take a look at the experience, how it is mimics the real life. It's going to load. We've tried it before.
Somebody's streaming this talk, aren't they?
All right, there we go. Let's play pool. In a Hangout.
All right.
By the way, John, I'm really good at computer pool.
That was weak.
I guess I'm not.
Remember, thousands of people just saw you do that.
All right, you guys want to keep playing, or should we go to code? Keep playing? We've got a bunch of these apps in the demo in the Google Plus Sandbox, so you're welcome to try those. I'm going to hand it to Jonathan. Let's switch monitors here. What I really wanted to do with these examples and the demos is give you a glimpse into what's possible in this new way of doing social and how to make it happen. What's the mechanics behind writing these apps? I'm going to hand it back to Jonathan, who will walk you through that.
Great, thank you, Amit. I want to begin with a story about 2 developers, Joshua and Charles. Now, Joshua and Charles really enjoy playing role-playing board games, and they've been using video chat technology to enable themselves to play with other fans around the world. And while it lets them play the game, it actually adds complexity. They got to fiddle with the camera, make sure it's facing the board, back at their face, back at the board again. They got to deal with managing cards, rolling the dice. It's got to be in frame because you don't want to be blamed for cheating. And it's just cumbersome. So when we launched the developer platform last year, they both jumped on and said, this is the best platform to bring RPG games online. I started developing a framework for RPG games. And of course, they discovered each other through Hangouts and started collaborating. It became wildly successful, and they decided to start a modest Kickstarter of $8,000 to help fund for licenses and designs. $5,000, all right. In less than 24 hours, they met their goal. I think last time we checked, it was about $19,000, $20,000 from volunteers, and about 900 folks who are investing in what is now Tabletop Forge. This is an opportunity. This is real. Users want to have these types of experiences inside of Hangouts. And honestly, if you're not building the next Tabletop Forge, somebody else will. So let's look at what you can do within a Hangout by talking about some scenarios you might want to build. OK, let's say you want to build a poker game, and you want to have a table. And you want to show when people are at the poker table and when they leave. So we have APIs that let you access information about who's in the Hangout, their Google Plus profile information like their picture, and actually respond to events when they join or leave the Hangout. So you can make that poker table like a real-life poker table. All right, let's say you want to build a drawing application where when somebody in the Hangout draws a path, it shows up in everybody else's Hangout. And also, you want them to have their own color and synchronize that color. Well, we have data channel APIs. The data channel APIs allow you to easily synchronize app state across everybody in the Hangout, as well as high-speed data, like that smooth curve you want to see. And that's built on Google's infrastructure, so you don't have to build a crazy amount of servers to do a real-time system. Now, let's say you want to go all the way with a fun, interactive application. Say, dress up like a unicorn and catch falling donuts. Well, you can do that. This is an actual application that was built in an experiment we did last month, where we have face tracking overlays that move with your facial positions, like this unicorn head, and the ability to respond to movement in real time. And that's how you can catch those amazing donuts. Now that you know what you can do, let's talk about how you can do that by looking at the building blocks of a Hangout app. And it all starts with the JavaScript and HTML that you write, which is your application code, and the features of a Hangout. Let's look at the JavaScript first. Right here is the simplest Hangout app ever. And you'll notice that it's XML. And we take that XML, it's just boilerplate, but it forms the foundation for your application. What you really care about is a little bit of JavaScript wrapped in a C data tag. And that C data tag is what we serve inside of a Hangout. And we take that, and it's iframed into the Hangout experience. We also allow you to serve an iframe from your own servers. Let me repeat that. We allow you to serve an iframe from your own servers inside of a Hangout app. If you only take away one thing from this entire talk about the technical implications of a Hangout app, it's that anything you can do in an iframe, you can do in a Hangout. Anything you can do in an iframe, you can do in a Hangout. That means you can use the technologies that you're comfortable with and the environment you like to build in to develop Hangout apps. This is probably my most favorite feature of Hangout app development. So that means you can use the server-side technologies you like to use, whether it be Python on App Engine, Ruby on Rails, Node.js. You can use the database technologies that scale for you, MySQL, NoSQL, your SQL, her SQL, anything under the sun. And of course, you can use the environments and the IDEs that work best for you. So if you have an existing, game with aliens and laser blasters, you can easily bring that into a Hangout. And if you have a new game that you want to build, a new application, it's easy to migrate it onto the Hangout Apps platform. Now let's go over the features of a Hangout, which is encapsulated in the Hangout.js. I mentioned that everything is a JavaScript. So we have a single JavaScript file that you include inside your application, and it gives you access to all the rich features of a Hangout that you can include inside your application. Things like participant information. So who is at the poker table? The data channels, the high-speed, smooth curve of that drawing. Other things like the audio-video effects, the overlays, and other metadata about the Hangout, like the Hangout ID and the URL. And with this one simple JavaScript include, you have the power of Hangouts within your application. Great. It's now time to show you how easy it is. On the stage, you'll probably hear other people saying that it's easy to build something on Google, but I have the luxury that I can actually code it live here in front of all of you in the live stream. Quick question. Who's played Guess the Pastry? OK, I guess I'm the only one who codes while they're hungry. So I'm going to build a very simple application. All it's going to do is show a picture of a pastry to the audience, to the players, rather. They have to guess. and they get a prize. So what I'm going to do is first show who's playing using the API, list all the participants in the Hangout. Then I'm going to take a guess and validate whether it's true or not. And then the winners will get a web badge of honor. And by web badge of honor, I mean, yeah, the Nyan cat. All right, let's get started. And if you guys notice any syntax errors or spelling mistakes, please feel free to shout it out, because this is partly collaborative. Now, to build on the Google Plus platform or any platform at Google, you have to first start at the Google Developer Console. That's where you create a new project and enable the services you want to integrate with that project. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project, right? Let's go ahead and create. I'm going to call this Guess the Pastry. And once it's finished loading, we now have a new project called Guess the Pastry. You'll see here there's a bunch of Google services that you can use. We're just interested in Hangouts today. So to enable that service within this project, I go from off to on. Now scrolling up, you may have caught that there's a now Hangout tab, and that is the most important tab for developing this Hangout. And there's a bunch of stuff here. There's a place to do descriptions, icons, privacy policy. But the most important thing is where you tell Google where your XML, where your application is hosted. It's got to be publicly hosted, so I'm going to throw it up on an app engine, and as we develop, we can move on from there. I actually have a starter project kicked off with a boilerplate, and we're going to go ahead and publish this to App Engine right now, and we'll see what this looks like. So I go back to our hosting service, choose that file. It's on the, I'm not going to cheat there. So I have a URL for this XML. It's now publicly available. Let's verify that it's the case. And this is what the application starter will look like. But it's not a Hangout app yet until I publish it to my project. Great, so once I save it, there's a URL to the developer sandbox. I click this off. It's firing up a Hangout. This is the developer sandbox environment. It's not publicly available, so you don't worry about while you're developing to expose it to other users. Now I'm in here, and we have our application. So there's the Guess the Pastry, and the picture and the form field. So now let's go ahead and add let's look at the code that we had in the boilerplate before we begin adding some functionality. So you'll recognize this XML from earlier. It's just the boilerplate. And I have some empty functions and some functions that I've started already. So let's look at the HTML part, because that's the simplest and what you can see now. Here we have a header tag, an image, which is the pastry, and some form fields. And that's really about it. The first piece of the API is already started. What we want to do is wait for the API to be initialized. And there's a simple event listener, which is the Hangout.on API ready. And you notice that everything is prefixed with Gappy. So everything is namespaced, it's logical, and the documentation matches that. So it's really easy to start developing. Let's go ahead and start our first API call. I'm actually going to do this directly within the Hangout, because the beauty of building JavaScript applications is you can test it while it's running. And the Chrome Developer Console has some great tools to develop with. Let's clear that out. So all I have to do is make sure I'm in the Hangout itself. And I can start calling something in the gappy.hangout namespace. Right? Oh, I got to spell correctly first. So the first thing I want to do is show who's in the Hangout. So what I'm going to do is call the getParticipants method. And what I'll do is return an array of all the participants in the Hangout. You'll notice there's only one, which is me. So there should only be one entry. Let's call it and see what it returns. It's an array of objects. And you can see, if I look into the person, that's me, John Beri. And so we're going to use that function right now to get the list of participants and display it inside the application. So going back to the code, what I want to do is have this function called showParticipants. And I'm going to do var party equals gappy.hangout.get participants. So we got that object. Next, we're going to just loop through it and set it to a string. So var display plus equals, let's do a p people and do an unordered list. And now let's do party.forEach function. Let's do player. And so now we're going to iterate through that array. And what I want to do is display an li element for each participant. And we're just going to do li and yeah, let's do it this way. We'll do break it up. Display plus equals, and I want to do player dot person dot display name. Display name. And we're going to close up that element. OK, so we're listing everybody's in the Hangout. Let's just do a simple display, close up the LI, or the UL rather. It's hard to type on a Windows machine. And then, so we've closed that up, and what we're going to do is insert that into to an element that we have stored, which is just the div equals document dot query selector, and then I want to do pound participants. So I'm grabbing this simple display div dot and setting its inner HTML to this display, right? And that should iterate and spit out everything we want to do. So let's go back to this hosting device. I'm going to choose to make sure that I got the right one. Great. Open. Re-upload. And we should now see it as we refresh. OK, so nothing is being displayed. And that's because we haven't called that method. So what I'm going to do is manually call the method again. Oh, there's a token error. Ooh, did anybody catch that? $19? Oh, good call. Thanks. Let's re-upload again. I told you this gets collaborative after a while. Cool, no syntax error, and now it's being displayed. So what we want to do is call that whenever somebody, when the application starts and every time somebody joins. So the next thing we'll do is register. We actually have this already registered. So the gappy.hangout.onParticipant is the first event that we want to register for. And I've done something really simple here. All I've done was call the show participant again. So it just keeps on looping and checking the gappy.getParticipants object and redisplaying it. It's clean. It's not very efficient, but it gets the point across. So now the guess piece. When somebody makes a guess, we actually call the JavaScript function directly from the onClick handler. So I'm going to go fill out that guess. And for this example, all I want to do is just store the fact that they've guessed. I'm not going to do anything fancy with the shared state functionality. And that's all I'm going to do is call the shared state API. And the shared state API is a key value pair of strings, very easy to use, and it's guaranteed across all participants. So the call is gappy.hangout.data. again, another namespace, dot set value. And the key we're going to use is the actual person's ID, the Hangout ID. And so there's a method for that too, which is gappy.hangout.getParticipant. Sorry, not the easiest word to spell. By ID. Right? And that's going to be the key to our key value. And then the value will just be a string that's true. Okay, yeah. Thanks, Gerwin. Another save by Gerwin. It's very simple. This is just going to push that value. And we can actually look that up. So anybody in the Hangout from the API can call and check any value in this shared state, which is really useful, especially with this asynchronous type application. And the call is, as you can guess, get value. So what I'll do is I'll add a get value for the hasGuessed method. And we can use that by passing in the ID from somewhere and retrieving it. Now it's just gappy.hangout.data.getValue. And it's going to be the ID. But to actually check what the value is, we're using strings. And so I actually have to check if that's a valid string. It's not a true, like as a Boolean operator. So we'll just do a simple if-else statement, right? It's saying if, and I'm going to attach this to a var guest equals. So if guest triple equals true, we're just going to return true. Else return false. This is a simple check. So now let's go ahead and save this. Go back to the hosting and push it to the App Engine server. OK, so it's updated. Refresh the application. And let's put in any string, right? OK. Now to verify that it actually worked, since we're not responding to that function, let's go ahead and call gappy.hangout.data.getState. And what this will do is just dump the entire state object, the entire collection of keys, key and values. And you can see that this is actually my participant ID that I just guessed with, and the value I set to true. So this is actually being saved and persisted. Now for the last piece is the web badge of honor, and that's the Nyan cat. And this is using our audio, our AV effects. And we're going to do a very simple thing. We're just going to display a static image of a Nyan cat if I guess correctly. And then from there, I can position it, but we're just going to render it straight on to the video feed. So I've actually started this here. Oh, I've actually already completed this here. But let's walk through it. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the value of the text box. And that's I ID'd it as guess, and check for the answer. I have an answer variable stored up here, and the correct answer is nom. OK, not exactly a pastry, but it's easy and fast. And then what we're going to do is, again, call our gappy.hangout object and do an av.effects and create an image resource. And when you create an image resource, we just pass in a URL of a publicly accessible image. And that loads it into memory. It's not being displayed. It's not being shown. But it's available for us to access. So all we have to do at that point is set show overlay. And what show overlay will, by default, render that image centered at full size on the video feed. We can also pass in configuration information, like scaling it and offsetting it and positioning it. But for this demo, we just want to have this. And what we'll do is whenever they guess, we'll call guessed correctly. And that will look up to verify that they actually guessed correctly. And if it does work, it should show an overlay. Let's re-upload it to the App Engine server. Refresh this, make sure I can be in frame. Reset, and see if this works. There we go, 9 cats. I guessed right. That's it for this application. As you can see, it's simple, but it's actually very powerful. I've touched on a bunch of the lowest level APIs, but sort of core to what you want to do. And we actually have a functioning app in, 10 minutes. So imagine if you want to build your application, how quickly you would get it up and running and focusing on building a fun or powerful user experience. Now, this was just very high level, but we actually have a code lab that takes a deep dive in later today that looks like it's going to be a space-themed one. So definitely check it out. The code lab link is here for those who are watching it on live stream, and it's going to go from everything from walking you to getting up and running and advanced techniques on debugging. Definitely check it out. Now, Google's built several applications. You saw some of them today. And we've worked with many of the partners who've launched initially and more who've come out today. And we've learned a lot. You know, when you build a platform, it's not so easy to see the vision in the future of what people are going to do with it. So we have a lot of lessons learned from building these applications. And we want to pass them on to you so when you get started, you can build the best user experience that you can within a Hangout app. So the first insight we have, which may seem obvious, is put people first. You're building a social application, a multi-user social application. So that means people are doing things within your application, things are flying around the screen. So you need to make sure that you identify who's doing what within the context of the application. So use the Google Plus profile picture if you can. Attach overlays or colorize and somehow distinguish users as they're interacting to make it easier for everybody else to know who's doing the turn. The next insight we have is social is about being together. From the fundamental level of your application design, it should be collaborative and synchronous. See, Hangouts are not really interesting when you're by yourself. You have a mirror for that. And when you go to 2 people or even 3 people, it's just a little bit better than a video chat. But it gets magical when you get to 5, 10, or public Hangouts that can go to hundreds and hundreds. So make sure that everything you do is collaborative and synchronous. And make your games really sticky. Users will join when you least expect it. Like this poor monkey, you didn't see this other one flying at him. The way that people find, discover, and join Hangouts is through the stream, which is real time, notifications, and mobile updates. So people will be joining Hangouts at random intervals. There won't be a start time and an end time unless you do events, and that might be a little bit better. But if you're doing an application, or let's say a game, it could interrupt the flow. So we've built into the system many callbacks that trigger whenever events happen, so you can make your applications respond correctly when somebody joins. So there are a ton of participant callbacks, and use them liberally and intelligently. The next thing that we learned was that playing alongside friends can be fun too. The classic use case of a Hangout app is having 10 people all in the room at the same time using an application together. But there's different ways you can group things. If you saw in the pool app, we were playing 2-on-2. In that application, you can actually play multiple games of 2-on-2. And what's that like? That's like real life. That's like a pool hall, where you have multiple games with people who can trash talk to each other, can comment on technique, or maybe learn from each other. There's even other ways of dividing it, right? You could have a semi-private mode, where you only see part of your world, and everybody else has a shared experience. Or something that we have not seen yet, which I'm hoping you guys come up with, which is the MMO style. So you could have N many Hangouts all participating in the same shared space and interacting together. I think it's really interesting and compelling. So think about different ways you can group users within your application. And make sure that you react. Make sure you react immediately and respond in real time. Like this poor guy, he wasn't following the ball and got hit in the face. Similar to the way participants join a Hangout, they interact within your application in real time. We have data channels, and we encourage the interactivity and responsiveness of your application. So you got to make sure that you respond to things that are happening, because the user experience will be broken if there's delays or if the flow is not great. So make sure you take advantage of these high-speed, Google-powered data channels to synchronize your applications. And you saw it's quick and easy to implement. And now, back to Amit.
Thanks, Jonathan. I think that was great. So in the last 45 minutes, we've looked at how we started with building a platform with this Hangouts product. We're still early, we're learning, and we're always looking for feedback from you guys. We looked at some demos to give you a sense of what's possible, and you saw Jonathan take you through the details of what it takes to build an app. I think the road ahead of us, for all of us in this room, is full of possibilities. I think we have, for the first time, a way to reimagine the web with live synchronous conversations and activities. This wasn't possible a few years ago. This was certainly not possible at this scale and free of cost. So I encourage all of you to take a look at what we've built and join us in this journey. With that, here's some pointers to how can you get started. We also have a code lab later today at 4 o'clock. Following this session, we also have a fireside chat with some more members of the Hangouts team. We will talk about aspects of our product beyond the app platform. We'll talk about Hangouts on air, mobile, where we're going in the future with this communications platform. With that, I think we'll take questions. Thanks for being patient. We've got 2 mics on the sides if you want to ask a question.
And speak loudly so the people on video can hear you.
Are there persistent Hangouts, or can you programmatically create an instance of a Hangout?
Persistence, as in they live forever?
Yeah, like you don't need a person to host it. It's just there, and people can show up.
Yeah, we have a notion of named Hangouts where you have a fixed URL, and we can use that in the meetings context. We had this as part of what we call as Hangouts with extras, and we folded it into a one product, Hangouts, and we're going to introduce it pretty soon with integration with Calendar and stuff. So you can create a meeting, have a fixed URL, anybody can drop in at any time.
And to add to that, you mentioned how can you programmatically create Hangouts? Well, we don't have, let's say, a REST-based API to generate Hangouts, but we do have this notion of the Hangout button. And the Hangout button is pretty awesome. It's a simple link you add to your website. We have an image for that. And it can do 3 things. One, it can launch a brand new Hangout from your site, or from an ad, or from anywhere else on the web. It can launch a Hangout with an app preloaded. And it can launch a new Hangout with an app preloaded. Plus, you can pass in initialization data. So for example, if you're a publisher and you have a football team's page, you can actually build a custom application using the Hangout Apps platform and have a button say, talk about the Broncos. And that will launch a new Hangout with your app preloaded, and it'll say, hey, this guy was on the Broncos page, and actually show that state of the Broncos app. I think we had a question, and they sat down. Oh, OK, great.
And for those of you leaving the room, if you like this session, there's those +1 cards. Put those in the box. If you didn't, you can just walk out.
Hi. So we set up a few MacBook Pros, maybe 4 MacBook Pros, to make capture a presenter at a GTUG. So we wanted to basically broadcast different dimensions of the speaker standing up, using the whiteboard, and just capture the volume. And we noticed that the MacBooks, they all seem to time out after a period of time. Not the screensaver, but it seemed like the Hangout. And of course, we just left them on some seats just to stream. So I'm wondering, is there a stay alive command that you can pipe through, or some sort of scripting you can do to kind of ping the Hangout if you're streaming without somebody to rock the laptop? Yeah.
So I think what you're referring to is the timeout that we have built in. After 90 minutes, or if you're inactive Hangouts, we time those out. And we built that provision in to kind of safeguard against abuse and using it for scenarios that we didn't want. But that's great feedback, and we're actively looking on how to change that configuration.
Thanks.
Can you create Hangout apps on Android?
So that's a great question. We don't have support for Hangouts apps on the phone, but we're looking at our options in the coming days, and once we have something to announce, you'll hear it.
Will you be making the code that you were just putting up available?
So the question was, will I be making the code available? Definitely, it's actually publicly available now, because I was pushing it live to production.
Google, guess the pastry.
And I'll post it on my Google Plus stream. If you're not following me, you probably should, if you're interested in Hangouts. And this is actually just sort of more advanced version of some of our samples. So if you saw the link up there, that's our developer site for everything to do with Hangout apps for developers. And in there we have about 10 different samples that go from very basic, this is the boilerplate to get started, to making fun overlays and sort of using the facial movement response API. So definitely check those out. And follow my stream.
Can you include Flash as part of the Google Hangout apps? Like a Flash player or a Flash application?
That's a great question. Actually, what you saw today,
we have had Flash games.
The pool game is actually built in Flash. So because you can serve it from your own iframe, because you can figure out the cross-domain and all those issues that are kind of hard without an iframe, you can serve a Flash game or Flash player.
Can you say a little bit about what your plans are with higher resolution, higher frame rate video, and where that's going over time?
I think the best place to ask that question is in the next fireside chat. I think there's folks who work on that aspect who might be able to answer that. Any other questions, comments?
I will say that some of those apps that we demoed are turned on in production already, so they're in the featured section of Hangouts. So you can give them a try right now. Actually, in the front row, some of our community developers are here. So if you have questions that you didn't feel like asking on camera, you can ask these guys because they're pretty awesome.
This seems to be more of a, this question might be more for the fireside chat, but I'll ask it anyway. Are there any plans to unify Hangouts, Google Chat, Messenger in the near future?
That's a great question. I think that's a problem we're thinking about, and you'll hear more in the next session.
And we've made some inroads in that, right? So when somebody invites you to a Hangout, we send an IM, and there's other touch points where you can launch a Hangout. So definitely something we're looking into.
Yeah. If you have wrote a great app and you want to promote it, what are those apps also in the apps list?
Yeah, so the apps that are visible within a Hangout in the apps list, those are the featured apps. Think of those as staff picks or editors picks that we have on Chrome Web Store and Android Market. So we have a team that carefully goes through a bunch of apps and promotes those. And we look at that all the time. So if we find something compelling, we promote those. But having said that, I think there's various ways for you to distribute apps virally. You can have, Jonathan talked about the Plus Hangout button where you can embed a button with an app launcher. You can do that on the Google Plus, on your Plus page. You can do it on your own website. Once you have a Hangout app that's loaded in, that sticks within your recent list. So we kind of remember all the things that you've played with. It's there for easy recall, and you can share that app with other folks within a Hangout.
How about the Chrome Web Store?
What about Chrome Web Store? So are you referring to distributing apps through Chrome Web Store?
Yeah, if you have a Hangout app and you want to put it on the Web Store.
Yeah, so that's again something we're looking at. We have nothing to announce right now. Hey, Moritz.
What about Flash and GIF support as an overlay?
Ooh, Flash. So Flash as an overlay and GIF as an overlay.
Right. Right now you can only add PNGs and JPEGs, but. And
we also support data URIs.
Yeah, sure.
So that was the data URI was recently introduced to allow more flexibility. I think people are trying to animate with overlays now. I think the first thing we're going to do is try to support that better. Make the ability to switch on and off overlays first before we look to other formats. I'm not quite sure Flash would ever make sense. It might just not a capability we want to explore. But that's great feedback around the GIFs.
Another question is, when you create an overlay or an image resource, you allocate memory, and there's still some kind of memory leak because the resources you allocate never get released. So if you created like a lot of resources, at some point you exceed your memory. So is there a fix in the works or something you work on that this will be sorted out?
Yes.
Good.
No, that was the short answer. The long answer is actually tails into what I just responded. By looking at how people are using the overlays and really pushing the limits, we've seen 500 image resources of decent quality being able to run on a standard machine, not even a MacBook Pro. But obviously it varies. So we're going to look into how we can better help you manage those resources, how the plugin can manage the resources for you, and how you can really get awesome types of animations within the overlays.
Perfect.
We'll take a question.
So, not sure if this is an events question or a Hangouts question, so I'm posing it in both places. First of all, tying Hangouts to events is huge for us especially. It's awesome, thank you so much. I know I've been annoying people with that question for a while. What we'd like to do is we'd like to tie the end of the event to the end of the Hangout, if that's possible. So right now we run games, we run the Tabletop Forge, and you never know how long the game is going to go, and sometimes it'll go 2 hours, and sometimes it goes 5 hours. It kind of goes till it's resolved itself for the evening. It'd be really nice if the event just spanned that period, and because I know initially people will just add 2 hours to whatever they think it's going to be in order for it not to run out before the game ends. Is that in the works or on the table, or should I go talk to the events people again?
Yeah, so I don't know about the definite plans, but we have some folks I can connect you with who are working on integration with events, and we can take a look at this feedback.
Cool.
Thanks.
Just talk to me after I get off the stage, and I'll connect you. Yes, sir.
Please.
3 quick questions related to inviting agents to a Hangout. Inviting from within a sandbox doesn't seem to work.
Yeah.
There's no PSTN dialing from within a Hangout in the sandbox to test PSTN calling. And the other one was, if you have an agent, if I have an agent get invited out of band to a given Hangout, the join button shows up. Is there any way to bypass the join button or some of the manual nature of that?
So let me take the first 2 here. So the invite functionality is disabled. That's by design. I think we built the Sandbox environment as a test bed for app developers. And the way to access it is through a whitelist that the developer gets to choose. So while you are in development, we don't want people for your app to actually get promoted with a larger Google Plus user base when you're not ready. So that's the reason we kind of kept it that way. You have to go in the developer console and explicitly publish your app to migrate it to the production environment, and that's where you get the invite functionality. Regarding PSTN out, again, Sandbox is something that the Hangouts API team uses to roll out functionality quickly, get your feedback before we graduate things into production. It's not a full fidelity environment, so we don't put all the features that we have in regular Hangouts into the developer Sandbox. But if that's something we expose through our API, we'll definitely include it in the Sandbox environment. And the third question I'm forgetting was the
join button?
The join flow.
The join flow in
development environment? Sorry, maybe if you can just jump on.
It's Hangouts in general. If someone comes into a Hangout, they have to click join implicitly to join. If you're trying to invite an agent to a call, having to have them manually click a join button is kind of inconvenient.
Okay, that's good feedback. Yeah. Okay, we've got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and we got to leave the stage.
Just a short question. If I develop an app for an on-air Hangout, there is no way to test it at the moment because the Sandbox only provides testing for regular Hangouts. Is there something also coming in the future to test on-air features?
There's nothing coming, but you just gave us something to work on. So that's great feedback. Okay. We'll take a look at that.
And we just, since we rolled out on air, we've added a very limited functionality to the API, so you can tell if a Hangout is on air. And now that we've seen how people are using on-air and Hangout apps, we have all these great ideas of our own and some feedback, and that's definitely something we're going to look at as we expand the API around on-air.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Please.
So, real quick, the format of Hangouts is very similar to OpenSocial in some ways. I mentioned I noticed there's no mention of OpenSocial. Are there any plans to move towards the OpenSocial standard for some of this, or how are you guys completely giving up on that?
Sure, great question, and we've gotten it before. If you've done OpenSocial, or if you've done Google Gadgets, and you're doing Hangouts now, you'll see there's it's part of the DNA from all that technology. And actually, Google prides itself in building a product, learning from it, and expanding on it. So if you look at the early Google Gadgets to what we have Hangouts, you'll see pieces of all these technologies, and we're using it in smarter ways and better ways, and applying it specifically to that environment. So you're right, this is not OpenSocial compatible, and for good reason. OpenSocial is not a Hangout apps platform, but it's OpenSocial is a thriving community. So as we mature this product and follow where OpenSocial is going, we'll see if we can bridge the gap in some way in the future. Thanks. We have time for one question on stage, but if there's anybody who wants to ask us questions one-on-one, we'll be right outside, or you can follow us out. And of course, we have the developer sandbox for more one-on-one questions. Nobody else?
Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.